Welcome. My name is Jana Martin, and I'm CEO of the American Insurance Trust, known to most of you as the Trust. Thank you for joining us today for the first of our two-part series on marketing. This webinar is the result of the work of the Trust SPTA Advisory Council. Let me tell you a little bit about this wonderful group. The Trust has long been a strong supporter of state associations. We believe that by supporting you, we support our policyholders, and that our partnership allows for the most benefit for all of us. As many of you know, we instituted the Trust SPTA endorsement program many years ago, and we're proud to say that we're endorsed by 48 state associations. We're always considering new ways the Trust can be a useful resource for you and for your members. And in late 2018, we created the Trust SPTA Advisory Council. The focus of this council has been to brainstorm ways to enhance the mutually beneficial relationship of the Trust and SPTAs organizationally and financially. The current advisory council consists of the following SPTA executive directors: Dr. Ray Folan, Hawaii; Miss Amy Wilson, Mississippi; Miss Carmen Scar, Nebraska; Mr. Michael Ranney, Ohio; and Miss Martha Turner Quest, North Carolina. I'm privileged to meet monthly with these fine and fun members who represent small, medium, and large associations from various regions who have a good mix of experience. I hope you were able to join us for our informative webinar on directors and officers insurance a couple of weeks ago. If you have ideas for future topics or on ways we can continue to support you, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. The next topic in our SPTA Executive Directors series is on marketing. Because there's so much great content to cover, we decided to break it up into two one-hour sessions. Today, we'll focus on some basics: how to keep a consistent brand, how to reach an audience, and what a marketing budget looks like. In part two, which will be held on Thursday, April the 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll focus on digital marketing. This will include how often to send email marketing, how to grow your search engine optimization, what social media platforms you should use, and how often you should post to social media. If you haven't signed up for part two yet, we'll place a registration link in the chat box now for you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our knowledgeable presenter, Marvo Regendon. Marvo is the executive director of the Washington State and the Alaska State Psychological Associations, as well as the president and owner of Thinking Cap, a marketing and association management company virtually based in Spokane, Washington. Marvo began his career as a graphic designer in the advertising and marketing industry. In 1999, he put his marketing communications degree to work and started his company, which provides graphic design and marketing services to local and regional clients in Washington State, California, and Washington, D.C. His company has won many awards over the years based on design and marketing outcomes. He also has been in volunteer leadership positions for several nonprofits, including KSPS Public Television, and he is currently the board vice president of AHANA, Multi-Ethnic Business Association. We're very fortunate to have him take the time to be with us today and share his expertise with us.
Thank you, Gianna, and thank you everybody that is attending. What a great opportunity to speak to everybody about marketing. And so let me get started. I need to share my screen. Okay, let me do a little bit rearranging first. Okay. So let me just kind of repeat what I'll go over today. First, we'll talk a little bit about a branding checkup, the types of marketing that many people start to consider, but I think specifically for SPTAs, understanding or defining your audience or your target market. And then, as Janice said, we'll talk a little bit about defining a budget. So most people, when they think of branding, they think of a logo, but really branding is more than just that graphic. It is more of an intangible asset for your organization because it brings value to who you are as an organization. And it really comprises of several components. So a corporate name definitely is part of your brand. External and internal corporate tone or voice, how you present marketing materials is also part of your brand. And then of course, graphics, the graphic standards that you set, logos, fonts, colors, and imagery all become part of a brand. And the interesting thing about a brand is that with branding and marketing, you should be able to point back to your company or your organization's vision and mission statements. And I know that everybody out there has one of sorts. And so I will use Washington State as an example to do this branding checkup that I'm wanting to talk about. All right. So for Washington State, and I'm sure that other states have a very similar sounding mission statement. Their mission is to support psychologists in training. And then they have 7 goals that they have. Actually, they combined all of them when I first came. It was this one huge mission statement, and I broke it up into that smaller statement followed by some goals here. Now I've highlighted, you don't have to read all of these, but I've highlighted a couple of these because I'm going to come back to them. But as you can see, they advocate on policies, they create a sustaining environment for diversity and inclusion, advance academic knowledge, make psychology visible to citizens of the state, create and maintain various income streams, support professional lives of psychologists, and assist members for informing best practices. Now, interestingly enough, when you start a marketing campaign, you could, if we went back to this mission, these goals, these are all components. All 7 components can be a part of a marketing campaign. Their vision statement is that the association aspires to excel and be innovative, effective, and a leader to advance the profession in the public interest of psychology. They also have a diversity statement where they commit to multiculturalism, committed to increasing knowledge of awareness and dedication to all aspects of diversity and include unique qualities of different cultures and backgrounds. All right. So if you examine those 3 documents, those 2 statements and the vision statement, the 3 statements, you can then start to deduct a couple things from the brand. One, that the organization is professional and educated. That comes directly from the mission. It also has a sense of compassion on social issues and diversity, and that comes from the goals and the diversity statement. And also the goal of leading and being and excelling, and that comes from the vision statement. All right. So if you take those thoughts of a brand, now you can actually do the marketing, because without a brand or who you are, you can't really market. You can't really go out and do any marketing, or you'll be lost. You will be stuck at first base trying to figure out what you want to say, what you want to do, and how you go about informing your audience of what you are and what you want to accomplish. And so now, interestingly enough, marketing benefits from good research, market research, And in a way is kind of related to psychology, because the goal is to understand behaviors and also to change a behavior in marketing. So in a way, there is a bit of a tie to psychology when we go into marketing. And the types of marketing that you can do after you've established your brand or rechecked your brand. These are 5 that I've put on the screen that I feel are doable for a state association. So influencer marketing, relationship, viral, keyword, and guerrilla. So we'll go and talk about those. All right, so influencer marketing. So this is like a current trend or buzzword nowadays. And primarily it relies on someone who has a large following. It can be a local celebrity. It can be the president of a company or someone within a field that is really known. But it really plays on their influence and what they say and what they are trying to express to influence their audience to do something. So of course, I have 3 images up there, Dr. Fauci and Lady Gaga and Dr. Evans, but it could easily be the state association executive director. It could be, a newscaster that maybe has a psychology degree, or anybody that fits the bill to be able to express your message, but also, again, they are influencing and they should have a large following. So the next type of marketing is relationship marketing. And I think everybody is pretty familiar with this. So relationship marketing is very effective because really what it's doing is it's building brand loyalty. And in a way, this is also another type of influencing marketing, because those who are in the market, looking for a change, they look for those who are already loyal to a particular brand. So as you can see, I've put up 3 logos up there: Amazon, the Ford, and the Trust. And so, when I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking back to a conversation I had with a member of one of the state associations, asking about, when's the next workshop for the trust coming up. And, I said, I think that we have one coming up in May. And she just went on. She said, that's the organization that I, the insurance company that I use. I don't like the other guys. I've always used them. And I thought, that's great. They have this one person and among many who trust the trust. There's a relationship already established there, and there's no need to go and look for another insurance group. So that's the nice thing about relationship marketing. And as far as doing a marketing campaign in the way of a membership campaign or promoting a CE event, relationship marketing also plays into those types of campaigns as well, because you want to be able to establish yourself as the brand to join that organization, or the brand to give a webinar or a conference. All right, so let's go to the next one. So viral marketing, also a new kind of a term. You've heard the term something went viral. That seems to be very, very organic, but in the way of marketing, it's a little bit more difficult to achieve a viral marketing campaign. You do need the aspects of influencers, because you need someone who has a large following, or you need several people with a large following. And the hope is that what you do is you push out a message, and then you have 100 people who have a large following push out that message again and push out that message again. If we think about, I think about the older days before computers and emails and stuff like that, that was kind of the aspect of mass media. Television would be the way to do it. You would put an ad on television because it reached a large audience, although it was contained. It wasn't viral across the globe. Radio is another type of old-time viral marketing because it reached the ears of a lot of people, whether it was local within your city or it was on a national radio station and reached a lot of ears that way. So the thing about viral marketing, again, it can be a little difficult to achieve, and sometimes you just never know whether it's going to work or not. Um, it's a marketing campaign that I don't have that much experience in, so it would be something that I would tag on with some colleagues and get their expertise and get their advice when we attempt a viral marketing campaign. So keyword marketing is the type of marketing where you as an organization say, we want to be able to reach a certain demographic, and we want to be able to reach them on the digital platform. So you may experience having been on your smartphone, reading through a news feed, or on your just on a regular desktop, and shopping around and scrolling, and you just notice these ads start popping up. Well, if you were on a website and you were looking for shoes, you might notice that these particular shoes are following you. That's one way to do it. But keyword is particularly when you type in a search word, that all of a sudden keys in certain demographics. And a marketer might say, I want to reach people that are interested in cell phones at a certain age and in a certain part of the country. And as soon as they find that you are on a certain website that meets those key demographics, they will pop an ad in front of you. So in this example that I have here for consumer cellular, you may not have been really looking for a cellular company to work with, but you may have typed in a couple keywords and you met a couple different other demographics. And so they conveniently on the advertiser's end slipped in an ad that may have caught your attention. So that's how keyword marketing works. The last one, being guerrilla marketing, is something that I really like as a creative person. You're using creative applications to do interesting things. As you can see by the two samples there, one wrapping a bus with a boa constrictor to really gain attention, and the one on the bottom for a watch, using the handles maybe found on a bus at an airport or something like that, but gives you an idea of what a watch could look like on your wrist. Guerrilla marketing really started a long time ago as a very low-end way to advertise. People would take a lot of flyers or posters and then plaster them on the sides of construction walls, just one right after the other, in areas of a downtown area to get their message across. Because either they didn't have a marketing budget, or they didn't have enough of a bandwidth to do much more than that. So those are the different types of marketing campaigns that are achievable. And as I mentioned earlier, a bit of a marketing mix that you can take a look at with any of these campaigns can either be through print, traditional print. Print's not going to go away anytime soon. It's still there. Radio, out of home, which is buses and interiors, bus interiors and outdoor billboards. Of course, there's digital now, and there's social media, both professional and public. And that topic we'll talk about in the second presentation. So let's talk a little bit about your audience. Now you can put out a marketing campaign. Once you establish your brand, you figure out your brand, you can develop a marketing campaign. But if you don't understand your audience, then you're wasting your money. Meaning you've created this wonderful campaign, but you're talking to the wrong people. If you don't know who your audience is, it's really important that you do understand. Fortunately for us, we are within the state psychological field, so we know certain things. about who our audience is. But primarily, we're going to be, marketers are looking for particular demographics. One, that will allow them to know what tone of voice to use when they use marketing. Images and colors can also play a part in knowing the demographics and also how they consume information. So for example, we just had this conversation the other day with Washington State, and they were talking about social media, and someone said, well, do we have a Twitter account? I said, well, yeah, we do. I don't use it very much. And someone said, well, why don't we? And I said, well, do you use your Twitter account? And I looked around and said, who else is using Twitter in this group? And nobody raised their hand. And I said, so that can kind of tell you something, that maybe this particular demographic is not a Twitter user. Maybe they do use Twitter to a bit, but are they consuming Twitter a lot? And if the answer is no, then maybe Twitter is not a right platform to be using all the time. All right, so let me get going on more about the demographic. So defining a demographic for a state psychological association is fairly easy. Primarily, it's psychologists, ECPs, mid-career, late career psychologists, grad students. But also, are there other fields of psychology that you may be attracting? For example, in Alaska, their membership also includes master's levels and other licensed behavioral health providers. So they've expanded their base of target market, and it's because they're a smaller state, and they're trying to grow their membership. It may not be correct for a medium and a large state. And as I mentioned, growing your target market for an SPTA. If you are going to grow that market, if you're going to grow your audience, are you including academics, in IO psychologists, research psychologists? And if you are, what benefits are you going to be able to bring them? So you need to step back a little bit. If you say, yes, we want to expand our audience to include other aspects of psychology, but a lot of what you do as a state psychological association is primarily geared to clinical psychologists, you need to be prepared to be able to offer those other fields of psychology benefits in order for them to have any interest in your organization. So it kind of comes back to looking back at your mission and your vision and your goals. If those mission, vision, and goals are not pointing to other fields of psychology, then you may need to start making some adjustments in order for those other fields to have interest within your organization. All right, so let me move on to a marketing budget. This is always very difficult to figure out. Typically what happens when people are looking at a budget, or if they have to make a budget cut, that marketing is one of the first things that they start to chop. And while they may think that it's a luxury, it really is not. They really need to consider marketing an asset of part of their whole operations. You should base your marketing off of business goals, position it as an investment, as I said, and not a cost. Develop your budget based on a marketing strategy and plan, and then also consider what growth stage your organization is. Are you in a growth mode or in a planning mode? If you're in a growth mode, that may mean you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing in order to grow quickly. If you are kind of in a planning mode, in the way of maybe you've leveled off and now you're planning for the next level, you may not spend so much on marketing. You may just be maintaining the status quo. And again, marketing should not be based off of what's left off of after you've covered your expenses. A typical thought is that small businesses under $5 million minimally should allocate 7 to 8% of gross revenue. 7 to 8% is actually, some people may think that that's quite high. But when you really take a look at what a marketing budget can consist of, that's probably about right. It can go lower. It could be 3 to 5% if you need be. But again, you need to base it off of business goals and a lot of those types of things. But understand that a budget covers things like brand development, website updates, corporate communications, like brochures, mixed media, social media campaigns, and marketing your CE events and things like that. So let me give you an idea of what this could look like. And again, you may, within your general budget, you may not have a big marketing budget, but you may have them spread out within the general budget. So you may create a marketing budget to the side and determine how much what that looks like. But then these line items may be sprinkled out throughout your general marketing budget. All right. So in general operations, you may have a line item for our advertising, web hosting, social media fees, social media development. So we've got to consider that. Is staff doing your development, or are you contracting that out? Corporate communications, so brochures and flyers, and then the development of that as well. Are you doing that internally, or are you contracting that out to a graphic design firm or an ad agency? Newsletter development, again, staff or contract. And there may be others within the general operation budget. Under membership development, you could have digital and advertising fees, promotional printing, so brochures or flyers to gain membership. Maybe you're doing a direct mail campaign, postage, and direct mail fees will play into that. Email campaign is not a correct email campaign is not free. It's not taking your email list and then blasting it out. There's other aspects of that, and you may need to actually hire a specialist, a marketing firm that specializes in email and digital marketing. So that's going to be a cost there. And then of course the email membership campaign costs will be part of that. When you do your events, also under your marketing budget. So digital and advertising marketing, printing of invitations, postcards, programs, direct mail, again, postage and fees, any signage that you need to have at a site, and there may be others that are there. So when you think about it, if you have a $200,000 operating budget, 7 to 8% could be $14,000. And when you take a look at all these different line items, especially when you go into convention and into membership marketing, $14,000 doesn't go very far, at least from the aspect from a marketing company, could not go too far. You know, we would be saying, could you increase that budget? Or with $14,000, there are certain limitations in what we can do with that small of a budget. So be aware again of that marketing budget. It seems like that when I think that the first time I looked at the budget for Washington State, I was looking for a marketing budget and there wasn't one specific, but what I could find were line items within the general budget. And when I started to put all those together, suddenly there was a budget that I could understand. But when I saw a line item that just said advertising and it only showed $90 a month, I thought, well, that's not really that's really not a marketing budget. That's only an advertising budget. So that's how we go from there. All right. So let me just kind of review what we've gone over today. Talked a little bit about a branding checkup. I think that's really important for any organization to do, but especially state associations. Make sure that you understand who you're talking to and what those goals are, because those will always reflect back to your vision and your mission statement. And sometimes you can veer from that, but primarily make sure that they do, because once you once you can relate them back to your mission and vision statement, then you can determine the type of marketing that you want to be able to do. And also, if you have certain goals within a mission statement, those become key components of a marketing campaign. So if a goal is to increase the awareness of membership through education, then you know that you have a campaign that can talk about the CE events that you offer. If you have a campaign that talks about that is looking to expand membership, talking about your diversity, you can go back to your goals or your diversity statement to show that the organization indeed does support those types of things. And of course, there were different types of marketing that you can then use, influencer, relationship, etc. And then again, defining and understanding your target market is going to be an important aspect of any type of campaign, because as I said, you can create a campaign, but if you don't know who you're talking to or where you're directing to, then the campaign goes nowhere. And of course, the overall budget, making sure that you can carve out the correct budget to do marketing is always important. Again, it seems to be one of those things that organizations may not put a lot into that budget, but if they only see it as certain line items. If you take all those line items and separate them into a marketing budget separately, then you'll see that you actually have a fairly decent marketing budget to go by. All right, so I'm at the end, and Jana,
Yes,
thank you so
yes.
much.
Well, no, thank you. This was a lot of information, but it
Yeah.
was done so well. Really, really appreciate it. So we have a question, and I believe that this was addressed, but I think it'll be helpful for you to repeat it if necessary. Um, Obviously, our group consists of a variety of different sized associations with huge differences in annual budget. Considering that we are all looking to expand membership, do you have a recommended percent of budget you would recommend for a marketing budget?
Well, as I said, the standard when you take a look at it tends to be 7 to 8%, but that's just a guide. As a smaller organization, you may need to reduce that to 3 to 5%. And then you do what you can within those parameters. It may not be that you can do a viral campaign or an influencer campaign, but you can certainly do a relationship building campaign, whether that is only through email or through a print campaign or a direct mail campaign. But it will depend on what you feel you can spend. But having at least defining that percentage allows you to then determine what aspects or what types of marketing you can try and do. Of course, you need to get the estimates and decide, oh yeah, we had budgeted X%, which means I have $2,000 to be able to do an annual campaign. And then you decide you're going to do it through direct mail. And lo and behold, after development and printing and the cost of postage, that may total $1,800. So you've
Right,
come below budget.
right. Great. There's a follow-up question, related follow-up question. What about membership marketing versus continuing ed marketing in regards to percentage levels? So this person's wanting to focus on how do you look at the percentage for membership marketing?
It's kind of, again, that budget is an overall budget. And I didn't go into the aspects of then breaking up that 7 to 8% into the different aspects of it. But I think that if you have several different types of marketing campaigns that you need to do, so a membership campaign, a campaign for CE events and things like that. If you determine that your budget for the year is $6,000, then you start, really what you need to start doing is getting some quotes and some bids to understand what the costs can be. As I said, um, a marketing campaign, a membership campaign, if it's done through direct mail, might cost $1,800 in the way of printing and fees and postage. If you write the content in-house yourself, you've saved a little bit of money versus subcontracting that out to a contractor to write that out. So that would then allow, if I said $6,000 and you spend 18, so you've got, another $4,000 plus to be able to concentrate elsewhere. Or you might say, oh, is that all that cost? Well, let's do another type of a marketing campaign to membership. Let's expand it. So we did a general campaign, but we haven't really talked directly to our early career psychologists. And that may take a different tone than a mid-level and a late career psychologist, right? So you may have two membership campaigns going concurrently at the same time with a slightly different tone of voice. And if it's still a direct mail campaign, um, you know, you are printing two different messages. I don't know that you're doubling the amount of envelopes and postage that you do, but depending on a marketing list that you come up with, the names may not double for ECPs, or they may. That is where you just now need to start talking to a direct mail house or a marketer just to get those numbers involved, and then you can determine how to break that up.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we have a few more questions.
Okay.
How do you measure the success of your marketing campaigns?
Well, if it's a membership campaign, if you have gained enough members to offset the cost of the marketing campaign, I would consider that a success. So let's say that you spent $2,000 on a marketing campaign for membership, and you gained 50 members at whatever cost, and that membership totaled $4,000 in membership fees. Your return on investment was well worth it. That's
Yes.
how I look at it.
Yes. And sometimes marketing impact is cumulative. And so thinking about, well, are you just going to measure it with this one campaign? Or are you going to try something different and then decipher which contributed to which outcome? That can be difficult at times.
Absolutely. And you could also take it a multi-year campaign. So instead of a
Yes.
1-year campaign, you may want to do a 2-year campaign, and knowing that it's going to take a little bit of time to reach that audience, because they don't always bite the very first time.
Right.
They don't always react to it. If you think about public radio or public television, they always have their campaigns going because they know that it takes 5 to 7 to 10 messages before someone says, I think I'll donate.
Right.
Same thing. It might be 5 to 10 messages before a member finally says, I think it's time to join.
Right. Right. Well, a lot of questions are coming in, Marva.
Right.
How far out do you plan all of your marketing campaigns? For example, CE events, membership, monthly highlights like Black History, Women in History, mental health awareness. So, how far out do you plan all of your marketing campaigns?
It all depends on the campaign. CE events, I like, for a convention, for example, I like to have 12 months. I would really like to be able to, 12 months ahead of time at the end of a campaign, at the end of a convention, I would like to be able to say, join us next year on this particular date at this same hotel. We have these speakers lined up, or we have these topics lined up. That gives enough time to do that. Of course, that never happens. Sometimes it's 8 months. I've struggled with being only having 6 weeks to market a convention. And you can see how that affects the amount of people that attend. So for me, a convention no less than 8 months would be great, but you know, it all depends on things like that. As far as things like Black History Month and all these other things that come up, you know when they are on the calendar. And so depending on where you are, okay, we are in March. We just left Black History Month. If you did not do anything for it this year, you put it on the calendar for next year. You just start. You need to just put it on and you figure out what you're going to do and hope that by the time you start planning again, you've got a little sticky note saying, oh, don't forget Black History Month is in February. What do we want to be able to do? And is it 2 months back before we start planning, or do we already have something in queue? And so all we have to do is execute it come February.
Mhm.
So
Great.
it's an ongoing process in the way of planning.
Right. And timing is important. If you're going to have, you don't want to have three huge events in the same month.
Right.
Uh, you want to space them out so you can plan how to approach them. So,
Absolutely. Especially if you're going to do like a spring convention and a fall convention. I'm facing this right now where, the thought was, well, could we push that into June? From spring, from May to June, and I said, well, as soon as we do that, that cuts out 1 month of marketing for fall.
right,
So we should have
right.
been marketing spring right after the fall convention, and then your committee members start to go, oh, I
Right.
see.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So there's a two-parter here. It's a statement, but then there's a follow-up question. So
Okay.
our marketing budget is higher because our state board of psychology will not give us the email addresses of our licensed psychologists. They will only give us their mailing addresses. We are focusing on our ECPs in our state, which is about 1,700 psychologists. And then the follow up question is, do you have any guidance on how to get these email addresses?
I don't have guidance on how to get the email addresses, unfortunately. Um, and so knowing that you have increased your marketing budget because most likely you are doing direct mail because you don't have those email addresses. As a marketer, to me, I'm like, good for you. You figured that out. You know that you're going to spend a little bit more money. To me, that's kind of a tough cookie to crack in the way of email addresses.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of lists will not provide email as part of their list because there's that aspect of spam.
Mhm.
And until some of the guidelines get redefined in the way of what is allowable to be given, it's going to be difficult. Some states,
Mhm.
again, don't provide the email list if you're, asking it from the state. Washington does provide that. Alaska does not. So
Mhm.
it all depends. If you
Right.
went to APA, if you do a data exchange with them, they do not. So,
Mhm.
it's a really good question, and it's a difficult question to figure out how to answer.
Right. Right. Do you think STPAs should have different social media accounts to target your audiences more closely or keep it all under one account?
I'm not sure I
So, like if you have a social media account, should you have one account that's for SECPs, one for mid level,
oh, I
and
see.
one,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, that would be ideal in the way of a targeted marketing campaign or social media campaign. Um, from what I know of, the public social media of Facebook, um, We have a Facebook presence in both Alaska and in Washington State. But when I poll board members of whether they have, liked the Facebook page or not, uh, very few of them have. And so there's a privacy issue that comes up. And so we don't really know whether that is effective or not. When members of an association might not want to like a particular page if it's public because of privacy. Um, so then where do you go? Do you go to LinkedIn because it's a lot more professional? And then if people start to say yes, then the question is how many people are on LinkedIn and how often? And when you find out, well, I just have a profile and you don't do too much more than that, then it's like, well, that's nice, but then is it worth spending the time to post on LinkedIn? And it's the same as what I was explaining about Twitter as well. Um, if mid-career and late career are not using Twitter, but ECPs and grad students are, then definitely a Twitter account that aims towards those younger demographics, that younger audience, is worth having.
Mhm. One
And
of,
older
oh, I'm
ones
sorry.
may look at it, but they're not on there all the time.
Right. One of our participants said we have one for ECPs, one for grad students, and then a general account. So that's similar to what you were
Yeah.
saying, that if you
Mhm,
find that that's where the market is, the audience is, and it works.
right.
Yeah. So
Right.
here's one.
Go
What
ahead.
has been your most effective, least costly marketing strategy?
So this is really interesting because this was a topic that we spoke about just recently at a board meeting. The most effective, least cost-effective marketing strategy for membership development is word of mouth.
Mm,
And that's going to be every board member reaching out to 3 colleagues that are not a member and talking to them about the association, encouraging them to join, and then going to the committee level and having them do the same thing. And maybe it's not 3 people, but it's 5 people. It's a little difficult with the state association because there's not a monthly event where people gather. I mean, pre-COVID days, right? Um, in a smaller aspect, when I ran a small business association in Spokane, we would have monthly luncheons and we would say, we have a lunch coming up.
mhm,
Here's the speaker, here's the topic. Please bring 2 people that have never attended this lunch.
mhm,
And the lunches were huge. And it just really started to grow. So that's a really good way to do it. It's just word of mouth. Again, it's an influencer campaign in a way, a very smaller influence, but that's the most cost-effective way to do it. Is going to be word of mouth through your own members to
mhm,
reach out to others to
mhm.
join.
It might be an interesting exercise for some EDs to ask their board members, uh, what led you to join? And I know in my experience, I've heard a lot of people say, well, so and so asked me to, or somebody invited me to come to a meeting. And I think you can learn a lot just from your own board members by asking that question. And
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I think that most people will say, well, because I was asked to by somebody that I like or admire or whatever. So that's a really good strategy.
Mhm. And again, so we point back to influencer and then relationship building.
Right.
So there's someone that has a relationship with your SPTA that likes it, reaches
Mhm,
out as an influencer and says, you should join this organization.
mhm. That's right. For those of us who are marketing challenged, do you have some very concrete recommendations based on your experience? For example, create membership recruitment ads that use X types of pictures or use Y types of headlines, avoid Z types of phrases, new member discounts work or they don't work. So what have you found based on your experience that are some very concrete recommendations for marketing for state associations?
And that's really interesting. And that's a long answer. So I'll just answer a little bit of that. Um, Again, it's going to be understanding the tone of voice and what will appeal to psychologists in the way of a headline. Um, do psychologists react to humor? So are your headlines funny? Is there humor within your headlines, or do psychologists not react to that? I recall that when we first started to do some um, digital marketing for an event coming up, and we tested 3 different pieces of imagery. One, that typical uh, stock photo image of a psychologist with a client, in a chair, that the brain, in a very interesting looking illustrated mode, and then just a professional that looked like a psychologist. And the the ads that got the most attention were the illustration of the brain, followed by just the professional look, and that clinical situation barely got any reaction at all.
Mm,
So we learned certain aspects of imagery for at least this one test, that clinical situation seems not to be very attractive
mhm,
uh, in, in the way of getting people to react to an ad.
mhm,
But certainly an illustration of brain graphically tends to get the most.
mhm,
Why? I don't know. I would love to see the research on that. I would love to have a marketing research on that. And I wonder if there's even some psychological research on that we could find. It would, as marketers, as I mentioned earlier, we like data. We like to understand how people react and what makes people react in order to develop messaging and imagery that will appeal to helping change a behavior.
mhm.
I mean, if that sounds like psychology, that's also kind of like marketing, but we're just doing it in a slightly different way.
Right, right. Shifting back to budget, do you recommend any different percentages for print marketing versus digital for membership campaigns? So, do you split out a percentage of your budget for print marketing versus digital?
I would say that print marketing is going to be a little bit higher. I don't have a percentage split at this point that I could recommend. I'm only saying print is going to be higher because print ad rates are much higher than digital ad rates.
Mhm,
And if you did 50-50, you can definitely do more digital marketing with half of that budget, and maybe that's the correct way to go. Again, it's going to be understanding your demographic.
mhm,
Is your demographic on a digital platform primarily, or are they reading the newspaper or a magazine primarily?
mhm,
If you find them mostly in that reading mode, then you want to concentrate on print.
mhm.
If you find that they're primarily on a digital platform, then you can concentrate on the digital aspect of it.
Right, right. So again, it's knowing your market, knowing
It
your association, and
Mhm.
some trial and error at the same time. Uh,
Exactly.
so yeah, and being flexible. If you find that this doesn't work, then you may want to move money to a different form of marketing. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
hmm
What's your favorite program or software for creating marketing material?
Well, as a professional marketer, with a graphic design background, we are using the Adobe Creative Suite, and it's just that's what we use. But I know that there are other softwares that are out there. There's a lot more now than when I first started.
Mhm.
And the getting used to the software really takes time.
Mhm.
You need to be able to spend time on the software. The unfortunate part about graphic design software right now, at least within the Creative Suite, is that there's three types. There's a desktop publishing software called InDesign. There's Adobe Illustrator that literally creates or is an Illustrator type of platform. And then there's Photoshop that deals with photography. And to be effective, you need to be able to use all three. And they are different. I mean,
Mhm.
I, I teach a graphic design class, and my class was last night, and one of my students said, "This is where I'm at with my project, and I'm trying to separate the background of this to that." And she was doing it in one of the pieces of software, and I said, "Okay, I think you're okay with that. Don't spend too much time because we're going to get into Photoshop next week." And you'll be able to drop that background out much faster than the way you're doing it now.
Mhm.
And so again, so as I explained to my class, is understanding the software and what's the right tool to use. You can certainly nail uh, put a nail in with a wrench or a screwdriver, but the hammer is the right tool, correct?
Right.
So
Yeah.
understanding what the right tool is to do that. And, if you're not a graphic designer, I know it can be very, very difficult to do
Right.
that. But the only recommendation I have is to use a piece of software and use it as often as possible so that you have a good command of the software.
Right. Great. We've got two more questions I'm going to try to
Okay.
squeeze in. I know we're right up to the hour, but
All right.
someone wrote, I've used a subject line tester website, and then they give the website before, which rates your subject line. What do you think of these?
No opinion. I've never used them. I've never,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Well, how do you measure the success of a campaign qualitatively with current members?
Oh, You know, I think that's kind of a long answer too. I think with current members, qualitatively, you're just going to need to be able to take some polls and do some
Mhm.
surveys with them, uh, and 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 see what they think. Uh,
Right,
that's that's really the best way to really figure that out,
right.
is to survey your members.
Yeah. Well, we're going to stop there. You have been wonderful. One person commented that they felt like you had a great presentation style. You were speaking just to them. So that's a high compliment.
Thank
So
you so
good
much.
job. I really appreciate your doing this, and I know that your colleagues appreciate it as well. We want to remind people is that part two is April the 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and the focus will be on digital marketing. So we invite people to come back for that. So thank you all. If you look in the chat box, you'll see the ability to register for part two in the chat box, but you can also register separately. So Marvo, thank you so much for spending time with us and for preparing. And we look forward to seeing you again on April the 8th.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks to all attendees. Take good care. Bye bye now.
Have a good day.
Bye bye.